because I've been spending so much time home alone, I decided I deserved a little treat. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Knits by Mandy. My name's Amanda, and here we talk about knitting and all kinds of other things. Today I have in store a fourth podcast episode for you all, and it's been a while, and things have been a little nutso, so it's gonna be a long episode, so strap in. And I think I'm just gonna get right to it. In these episodes, I go over any new finished objects, works in progress, updates, and anything I've cast on in the last month or so. I'll show you some acquisitions. I do have some today. And then I sometimes touch on future plans and also talk about what I've been consuming media-wise. I've talked about shows and podcasts I listened to in the past. I think I might talk about a few books I've been reading, just to switch it up a little bit. So with that, I'm going to get started. So, yeah, there's a cough. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a life update and then go into everything else about knitting. So I'll put chapters in, and if you're not really interested in like what's been going on in my life, that's fine. We can just skip ahead to the knitting. But it's just been honestly really like go since I think I last checked in. It's been a while. It's been over a month since my last podcast episode, and let me just tell you all what has happened since. I went home to Pittsburgh again because my cousin was having a surprise wedding, which was insane. It was so fun. It was a really small, fun, intimate wedding. The weekend after that, in June, I went to Cancun to celebrate one of my good friend's birthdays, which was, again, super fun, but also exhausting. And then my boyfriend got COVID, and so I was isolating, and then I got COVID, and then all of June passed, and now we're here. And I kicked off like my first big event at work. The first day that I was supposed to run my event, I was sick. I tested positive for COVID last Tuesday. So it's been a bit of a wild ride. I've felt like clawing at the walls of my apartment a few times. And now we're here. So all to say is that this is a delayed episode because one, my life's just been like crazy, and for a time there, I didn't feel like filming. And then I didn't feel like filming because I was sick, and I also didn't have a finished object to show you. I finished this last week while I was in the throes of COVID. So make sure you're vaxxed. Let me just plug that. And I don't know what it would have been like if I didn't get vaccinated. I'm still on like day 8, and I'm still obviously stuffed. I don't have my full sense of taste and smell back yet. So we're getting there. I've been like huffing essential oils because they say that's what you have to do to like remind your nose how to smell. So yeah, just stay safe out there. I hope everyone's staying well and healthy. I have avoided COVID for 2 years, and I've been honestly very privileged and lucky to be able to do that. So I just hope everyone's staying okay and safe. And so with that, there has just been like a lot going on, and to be really frank, like the mental game of COVID, I did not expect it to be as hard being alone for this long as I did. So I've scheduled a trip home once I'm out of my quarantine status, because like sometimes you just need to see your mom, and I'm very much feeling that right now, and my dad and my brother. But you know what I mean? You just like have that feeling of wanting to be home. So I'm gonna take some time, and hopefully we can all just like chill when I'm at home, and we can have a really easy time. So yeah, it's just been, I keep saying that, but the past month and a half have been really just a lot. A lot has gone on in the United States, and a lot has gone on in my life, and So we're here now, and I want to talk about knitting for the remainder of this podcast. So with that, I'm trying not to hack up a lung, so we'll keep my whistle wet. And let's start talking about what I'm wearing. So I am wearing Camisole number 5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I feel like, okay, you're gonna see my bra straps. This is not very profesh, but I also didn't want to be nipping on my podcast, to be honest with you. So I don't really like strapless bras, so I kind of wore a racerback one, but the straps are still. So anyway, you might see a bra strap peek out. I hope that's okay. It's 2022. So anyway, I'm gonna come up a little bit closer so you can see. This is Camisole number 5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It is this high-necked cami knit in a 2x2 rib, and I honestly thought I'd never finish it. It took me about a month and some change, maybe a month and a few weeks to finish. And that was working on it mostly monogamously, I think since I looked on my Instagram, it was like the beginning of June or late May, and I finished it last week, which was also mid-June. So about a little over a month. I knit it in Knitting for Olive, Merino in Cognac. And when I ordered the color, I thought it was gonna be a bit of a lighter brown, but it's definitely more of like a chocolate color. But I am really honestly liking how it's looking on and with my coloring. And like I do get a bit of, my skin like gets a few shades darker in the summer. So like I really like how it looks with my tan. Yeah, so let's talk about my process making this and the construction. And yeah, the thing honestly that I like the most about this shirt is the armpits. So let's start at the armpits. So like I said, everything's made in 2x2 rib. It's really clever, I think, how she makes her patterns. I think they're very well thought out. And I did almost mess up my one strap. I think I wasn't like counting correctly and I had to rip it back, but that was definitely on me because I didn't realize I was making like the inverse, and so I just followed the same instructions and the ribbing got all messed up. That was definitely on me. I think My Favorite Things Knitwear definitely has like a very like creative and structural design eye. It is unfortunate that she doesn't have a wide size range. I think the highest she goes up to is an XL. I made myself the small, and I have about a 36-inch bust, and I'm kind of forgetting what this what the pattern called for, but I do know that High Fiber Knits, she made this camisole recently, and she made the medium, and she noted that the armpits were pretty wide. And so once I got to the armpits, I still had kind of time to decide what size I wanted to make. And after holding it up, I decided that I was gonna have enough room. And I'm happy with the size that I made. The only thing that I would note is I could have made the straps longer, because the collar, I know I have a bunch of jewelry on, but the collar is a tight squeeze over my head. It definitely like stretches all the way out and it gets really taut when I pull it over my head. And I can't like wear my glasses when I put this on, if that makes sense. So definitely something that like you couldn't wear big earrings when you take it off, and I'll just have to be mindful when I wear it. But this is a pretty high neck design, but I think if you're gonna make that, I would go ahead and be conscious of just the collar area and making sure you're giving enough room for the old noggin. Yeah, so you basically make the front panel, you make, excuse me, you make the back straps, you make 2 straps, connect, and then you connect it in the back. You do provisional cast on and make the back. And then you know, I'm not gonna reveal too much, you knit in 2x2 rib. I'll show you, I guess, how long it is. So I usually wear pretty high-waisted like pants in general. So I talk about this sometimes. I usually like to go for like a waist length shirt. So this kind of comes right at, you can see like this is my natural waist. So I usually like to make things there a little bit longer, and then I can just tuck them in to my bottoms, or, I mean, I don't wear things this low. But I like have a little bit of a give there. So I like how this looks tucked in because I like this to think of this as like a more streamlined and like form-fitting garment. I will say I thought the finished item would have a little bit more stretch, and I did think that I could get away with wearing this braless a little more easily. Like I kind of thought it would just squish a little bit tighter, but that wasn't the case. So I think I maybe just misjudged what it looked like online and like actually how stretchy it is. I do have the Jessie made ripple bralette that I made about a year ago, and that's in 3x3 rib, and that's also made with negative ease. And I'm also trying to remember the ease on this tank top. I'm sure you could make it smaller to make it much tighter, but then I think I would worry about, you'd have to like really pay attention to your collar and also the armpit. I think I'm at a pretty good like armpit distance right now where I think I have enough space, but it's not too high, especially for the summer. Like this just gets like a sweating area. So yeah. So for the modifications that I made on this tank top, I think making it shorter is usually something that I end up doing with my pieces. And then I also did the collar differently. So for the collar, she calls to do it double knit, just like the sleeves. And I tried doing that, and then I tried doing the suggested bind off method, and it just didn't look right. And I posted about it on my Instagram story. I think I just did it wrong, which is kind of frustrating because I feel like sewn bind offs aren't that complicated, but like something went wrong and it wasn't looking like a smooth invisible edge that you would want the collar of a shirt to look like. So I pretty quickly ripped it back and just cut into the yarn, because I was also, this was as I was sick, so I was like, I'm not redoing this collar in a double knit way. Like it was so annoying just to like set it up to do the bind off. So I decided I just, instead of doing double knit, I just picked up stitches at the same rate she suggests, and just knit stockinette and did a folded collar. And I honestly think it gives the same effect, and it might contribute to the collar being tight, but I think it would be tight no matter if you're picking up stitches. I think if you're picking up stitches on this collar. So just be mindful, like I said, of doing that. But yeah, I think it looks just fine. It doesn't stick up too much. And yeah, I just kind of was folding it as I went to see what length I'd like, because I definitely didn't want something too high because it's already very high necked. But that was the finished object. So would I make this again? I don't think so. I don't think I have need for like multiple of this silhouette in my wardrobe, but I'm very happy that I made it. I think it'll quickly become a wardrobe staple for me in the summer, and a transitional piece for different seasons, because it is merino wool. I did purchase, along with this Knitting for Olive merino, I showed it in my last podcast, I ordered cotton merino, and I think I'll make one more fingering weight tank top this summer, and then I'm done, because I was like just ready to be done. It is a bit of a slog, just because it is a fingering weight shirt, but I do find in the past when I've made fingering weight objects, I really, really like them, just because I think they feel less knit, if that makes sense. And I'll kind of show it in comparison to something I'm working on right now. I think it gives it like a more luxe quality, honestly. And that's not to like diminish anyone else's work, because I work in things of all sizes. I honestly prefer working things in like a DK weight on like 4mm needles. But I can't really deny that when you make something with a fingering weight yarn, it just like, the drape is really nice, and it just gives a nice effect to it that you can't really achieve with thinner yarns. So I probably wouldn't make this exact top again. I definitely want to make a fingering weight cami again. I think I might take do a might do a recipe. I do love when pattern gets translated to recipe and from like different languages to English. I find that's really funny because I'm like, I'm just gonna cook up this object. Anyway, what was I saying? I think I might make a knitting for olive tank top, another fingering weight tank top in the future, but I'm taking a break from that, and I will talk about that next. So I think I've exhausted talking about this tank top. It's honestly been all over my Instagram feed, so you've probably seen other people make it. It is a basic, and I really like and enjoy being able to make basic knit items like this. And I think this is kind of another thing that looks like you could buy it at a store. And I really appreciate that quality of knitwear when I can achieve it. So yeah, it kind of just gives it like a more classic feel and vibe. I do feel like this whole outfit that I have is very 90s, and I think it's maybe because I have these linen pants on that I'm just getting 90s. I think high necks were popular in the 90s, right? I get like a 90s beach girl vibe, kind of ish. And muted palettes were also kind of a 90s thing. So with that, that is my one finished object. And again, I did kind of delay this podcast because I wanted to just show you the finished object. But realistically, it took me a while to make this. So it did not just take just a month, it took a little bit longer than that. And just to be realistic about like how long it can take to knit things, I'm not someone who can knit super, super quickly. Especially on fingering weight yarn in 3.25mm needles. No, yeah, I think that's how big they were. They were very small. Okay, so let's move into whips that I'm working on. I also delayed filming this because I wanted to cast something on to show you, even though it's like this much. But first I thought I'd just quickly show you the update on this blanket that I'm making for my aunt. Okay, I take up the whole frame. That's exciting. So this is how much I have so far. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm alternating 4 colors, and I've started going into the second balls of yarn. I bought like 2 of each color. So I think I might just stop once I'm done, but I guess I'll see. I think that'll be enough. If I double this, that'll be a pretty decent lap blanket. I didn't want to make anything like huge for a bed or anything, just so like my aunt could have it on her couch or like at the foot of her bed. So yeah, I'm working on this. There's not really much to say. I was following a TL Yarn Crafts video. It's the Ripple Stitch, and I'm just using Red Heart Super Saver, which isn't the softest acrylic yarn I've ever touched in the world, but it's doing the trick. And I've honestly liked picking this up. I did take a break on this for a while because when I was traveling, I took this to Pittsburgh, but I took the tank top to Mexico because I was on a plane, and this keeps getting bigger and harder to travel with. So when I was in the car, I took advantage of crocheting in the car. So yeah, I'm really actually liking how the color looks. I feel like this grape purple is really aggressive, but we're working with what we got here. So that is the update on my crochet blanket. I definitely go in and out with this. I kind of wish I could just be done with it so I could give it to her. But I'm trying to also just enjoy the process of making it, because I don't know the next time that I'll like pick up and start a blanket again. I don't know the next time that will be. So trying to enjoy the process. It's really just nice to put on, make when I'm watching TV. But at the end of the day, I do just prefer to knit over crocheting, and I'm fixing this and talking to you at the same time. And I'm sorry if it hurts anyone's feelings, but I'm a knitter at heart, but I don't mind picking up the old crochet hook every once in a while. Okay, so that was the update on my blanket. Next, I think I'll skip ahead and show you some yarn that I've acquired and then the whip that I've cast on with that yarn. So, because I've been spending so much time home alone, I decided I deserved a little treat from Wool Warehouse, and I wanted to get some more Drops yarn. Drops, if you don't know, they're like a really pretty inexpensive online, no, they're not online, I think they're like a British brand or a European brand, but you can get it shipped here pretty inexpensively from Wool Warehouse. So I got 3 different yarns, and I'll show you the mohair first. I decided that, actually let me pick up what I wanted to pair this with. Back in April, I impulse purchased this La Bien-Aimée yarn. This is their Merino single superwash wool, and I liked how it looked in the hank, and then I wound it up and was like, oh, I'm not super inspired by this. I don't have a plan for it. I have about 800 yards. I bought 2 hanks, which is also kind of an awkward amount. And so then I decided maybe I'll like it better if I hold it with a mohair and I kind of dilute the colors a little bit. I think right now it's a very pretty yarn, but like I'm just not feeling like I know what I want to make with it yet. So, and also the colors are like very, and I talked about this in my last video, they're very like jewel tone and like autumnal in my opinion, and they're not necessarily like summer patterns, so I'm not like summer colors, so I'm not itching. I know I'm wearing like chocolate brown, which also isn't a summer color, but it's a neutral, you know? So anyway, I decided to buy some Kid Silk, yeah, the Kid Silk mohair from Drops. I kind of wanted to check it out because it's, I think, one of the most affordable mohairs on the market that is a mohair silk content. I think the next best thing you could get is what Hobie sells, which is their Diablo, which is an acrylic mohair blend. But I think this is pretty decent. It's like $3 or €3.75 for 25 grams. So that's pretty decent as far as mohair goes. So I thought I'd check it out, but it's kind of funny because I have this like very expensive yarn paired with like the cheapest mohair I could get my hands on, but maybe they'll like kind of meet in the middle quality and like softness wise. I mean, it is a superwash wool, so like superwash isn't the most like lush material. So anyway, that is, I just have this and I need to figure out what I want to make with it. I think I might try to make a slip over because I think that's what this length of yarn will lend itself to. Now that, especially if I double it, I will have technically less if I use bigger needles. This is where the math part of knitting really gets me, and I'm like, I don't know. So that's what I'm gonna plan to do with the mohair. The next thing I wanted to get was some cotton yarn. So as I mentioned about this tank top, I really make like the feel of a fingering weight object, but in the summer, I really just have this urge to kind of bang out a lot of cotton tanks. And I wanted to do that. So last summer, I made a lot of colorful tank tops. I made this 2 shirts with this really colorful speckled yarn. I made this really bright green tank top that you've seen me talk about. And I haven't made a lot of like basic colors or neutral colors that I feel like I could get a bit more longevity and wear out of, and kind of, instead of using them as statement pieces, I can use them also as building blocks in my wardrobe. So I'm making another brown tank top, and I'm making it with Drops Saffron. So this is in, This is color 22 and color 18. I think it's like they're off-white and light brown coffee. And so you can see this is lighter than the brown that I'm wearing, and I'll show you quickly what the whip looks like. And I decided to follow a free drops pattern, which I'll put on the screen. And you hold these like 2 different colored yarns together for a marl effect, and hold it double and knit it up on 5mm needles. And this is going to be a kind of like a tunicky cotton tank with a scoop neck and 2x2 rib edging. Free pattern, and I was really looking for something pretty simple. And I think when sometimes I like crave wanting to follow instructions directly and, you know, make something to a T, but I really liked the marl effect of this. And also I just wanted to be able to pick out a yarn and know I'll have a pattern to make for it, because sometimes it can be frustrating just like going down the Ravelry hole and being like, okay, I have a sport weight yarn, like what tank top can I make with that? I feel like it's almost limiting, even though there's so many options. So I decided to go ahead and just like base my pattern off a free pattern. So I'm modifying the construction a bit in that it's meant to be knit in panels bottom up, but I just decided to combine the stitch counts and make it in the round, and then I can just split the front and the back when I'm ready and follow the instructions for the panels that way once I get to that splitting point. So that is what I'm doing with this tank top. And I really liked the marl effect, and I'll show it again a little bit closer. Their example had it with their pistachio color, which is like a light green, which I thought was beautiful, but I'm obviously being called to this color palette this summer, which I didn't really see coming, because last summer I had a lot of fun experimenting with bright colors. But I think I also just want to have a few more pieces that can just be a little bit more versatile than something that's bright green or like speckled rainbow. So I think there's definitely room for both in my wardrobe, but I think after this, I'm excited to start working with another color again, like that blue cotton merino that I have, and kind of thinking about what I want to make in the fall as well. I mean, it's still summer, so I would ideally like to knit this up pretty quickly and get this done by like mid-July, because I am on bigger needles and it's a pretty simple design. And then I would like to, where's this coming from? It's like stuck. Uh-oh, we have a yarn party going on. Okay, ideally I would like to be able to finish this in July and then like keep kind of the train going on summer knits. I don't know why I feel like more of a rush in the summer, but I just feel like I have so much more like time, because it's like, oh, I don't have to knit sleeves. Like there's endless potential in the things that I could make now that I'm unencumbered by needing sleeves. So I think I just get really excited, and I really honestly love summer knitting. It might be my favorite. I mean, I love making the sweater, don't get me wrong, but like also knitting a tank top, because it like subverts expectations, you know? I also think low-key people are more impressed when they see something like this, or like my Venice wrap tank. They got a lot of attention from like family members and friends being like, oh wow, this is like, you knit that? It's like, yeah, I knit this. But like a sweater, they're like, oh, freaking anyone can knit a sweater. No, I don't think anyone thinks that. But yeah, that's just my ethos on summer knitting and like why I think I like it so much. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Are you the kind of person that will just like knit a sweater in August, or do you like to kind of knit with the seasons? I'm definitely a knit with the season kind of gal. Because I also get really anxious when I can't, or like not anxious, but I get like antsy when I can't wear something that I made right away. That like makes me not jazzed. So okay, so I think we sorted through my whips and my finished object. I'm not really working on that many projects right now, obviously, but you know, I like to keep it that way. Now let's talk about, we talked about acquisitions. I kind of already touched on my future plans. I think we are at the part of the podcast where I talk about the media I've been consuming recently. So let's chat about it. I think I'll mention a few shows and then I'll talk about the 2 books that I've read recently that I've enjoyed or am enjoying. Now, okay, so television. What's going on TV? I am watching The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, which is, I can't decide if I like where this season is going. If you're unaware and unfamiliar with what's going on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, let me just fill you in real quick. If you've ever heard of a little movie called Erin Brockovich, someone who was one of Erin Brockovich's lawyers, his name is Tom Girardi, was married to a Beverly Hills housewife. And they had this huge age gap. He was this very old, like, established lawyer in LA. Obviously, he was on the Erin Brockovich case. And he married this cocktail waitress, and her name's Erica. And she, like, started this pop star career. And they call her name's Erica Jane. That's her pop star alter ego. Anyway, this man turned out to be not very nice and not very good, and he was embezzling the settlement money from his clients. And this like all has kind of gone down in the past few years, and it's all unfolding as she's still on The Real Housewives. So it's almost taken like a true crime spin where it's like there's just like breaking news all the time about Tom, and that was kind of really the last season, was everything coming to light and her getting a divorce and then this news coming out. It's honestly quite captivating. And they did a Hulu documentary, that's a very loose term, last year on them called The Housewife and the Hustler. And like basically this documentary implied that Erica like knew what was going on and had a part in it. I personally believe there's no way that she didn't know, but I don't know. What do I know? Anyway, that's what's going on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. If you're interested in scandal and people mixing their anxiety medications and alcohol, that's what's going on there. I also, while I got into a kick this month, but every once in a while I just have an urge to like watch all of RuPaul's Drag Race, but I don't have Paramount Plus, so I just watched like the old seasons that are on Hulu that were done through VH1. So I watched like seasons 6, 7, and 8, I think, pretty recently. 5, 7, and 8. I think I might have skipped 6. Anyway, I watched that in the beginning of the month. I just like had that on in the background some days during work to keep me company. Because I love just like the Project Runway aspect of it, but like the drag queens of it all. So that's been fun to rewatch. I think I might maybe shell out for Paramount Plus and I can watch the new All-Star season because it looks really good. It's not a show that I necessarily like keep up to date with, but I like to kind of drop in and like see what's going on there. When I studied abroad in college, Spanish Netflix had like all of RuPaul's Drag Race, so it's part of my cultural immersion. I watched that. Money well spent, no. I mean, that was a great time in España. In España. Anyway, since I was sick, I really needed comfort shows on, so I rewatched all of seasons 3 and 4 of Gilmore Girls, which are arguably, I think, my favorite seasons. Season 4 has some of the best episodes in all of Gilmore Girls history. You have the Festival of Living Art. You have Scene in a Mall. You have The Last Reigning Warlie. You have a lot of good ones. Season 3, you have The Dance Marathon and Dave Rogowski. So justice for Adam Brody and Dave Rogowski is what I believe, basically. So yeah, I honestly just really needed something comforting, so I watched that while I was off of work last week. I needed something that like wasn't new and I could just have on and was very like, was gonna keep me company. And so for that reason, I haven't watched any like, I don't want to say real shows because reality TV is real, but like I haven't watched anything like really good recently. Not that Gilmore Girls isn't good. I've just seen it 1,000 times. Shall we talk about books? I don't think I have podcasts to mention either. I have been kind of taking a break from podcasts as well. Or like I've just been listening to ones I mentioned on this podcast before. But I have been reading a little bit more, and I thought I'd just talk about the 2 books. One book that I just finished and one that I just started. So I honestly, before I went to Mexico, I just went to the library on a whim and was like, let's see what I can pick up here, because the library holds in DC are always crazy for popular books. You have to wait like months and be on a hold list of like, not even kidding, 200, 300, 500 people. So love that other people are reading, but like if I want to read an Emily Henry novel, I need to get in line and wait, or just purchase it. I'm a big library girl. So anyway, I picked up The Switch by Leah O'Leary, I think is her name, and it was just the darndest, cutest little novel I ever did read. So it's about 2 people. It's about a grandmother. It's about a family. So it's about a grandmother, her daughter, and her granddaughter. And the grandmother Eileen and her grandmother, the grandmother Eileen and her granddaughter Lena, they switch places for 2 months. So Lena moves from London to the English countryside in Yorkshire, and her 70-some grandmother moves to London and lives in her flat, in her granddaughter's flat with her roommates. And it's just like really sweet, and they also talk about like grief and kind of moving on as a family from a death. And it's just like the sweetest novel, and it just made me think of my grandmothers. And I both my grandmothers have passed, but thinking about, oh my goodness, like what would it be like now if my grandmothers were still alive and we switched lives and they like came and lived in DC and lived in my apartment and lived my life. I don't know, I really enjoyed kind of thinking about my family that way when I was reading that book. So it was a really sweet read, very cute, easy read. It was great to read like by the pool when I was on vacay. So I would recommend that. The next book that I picked up was The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. And I know Ann Patchett's like a very popular author. A few years ago, I read Commonwealth, which is the book with the oranges on the cover, and I like tore that book apart. It was so good. I read it, I think, in a week. It was just really good. So if you're unfamiliar with Ann Patchett, she writes novels about like families and They usually have stories that span generations, and they're just very captivating, and the characters really just pull you in. So I've just started The Dutch House, but it's about a brother and a sister, and the house they grew up in Philadelphia, and kind of like the relationship with their father and growing up without a mom. So far, I'm just like really pulled into the book, and if you like family drama, I would pick up an Ann Patchett novel. So that's my recommendation. And that's what I've been reading. If you have any recommendations for books, I struggle with reading because I feel like knitting is what I want to do when I'm sitting alone. But I do like to try to at least read at night before bed, or like, I don't commute anymore. I used to read on my commute, and that was when I would get my reading time in, was commuting, and sometimes at lunch at work even. That was really nice. I miss that. But no longer. So anyway, if you have any recommendations, I'll probably get my hands on the new Emily Henry novel. I read both of hers last summer and enjoyed reading them. I think they're fun. I enjoy a little rom-com. Sometimes I enjoy a little smut, but it's not like the only thing that I read. So, a funny anecdote, I kept picking up books and reading them and knowing that they were like romance novels, but maybe not knowing exactly that they were like smutty. And then I feel like at work, at my old job, we would always talk about what are you reading, and then I would be like, oh, I just started this book, like it's a romance novel, it's like a fun summer read, and then I'd keep reading and I'd be like, oh my god, I just told everyone I work with that I was reading this, and I would get a little embarrassed for myself. It was even worse because my boss would be like, I'm reading that book. And I would just be like, I did it multiple times. So there needs to be warnings on books that say, don't use this as your icebreaker. Pick another book. Because this one's gonna be awkward when your other coworkers read it and find out you're a freak in a good way. Anyway, those are my thoughts on knitting and books and media. I think that has brought us to the end of today's podcast. So, okay, I'm gonna put my knitting down. All right, let's film an outro. So I believe that brings us to the end of the podcast episode today. Thank you for being here and listening to my extra nasally voice today. I would love to hear what you thought about the episode. If you have any thoughts, in the comments down below, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos coming up. And thank you again for spending your time here. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see y'all soon. Bye.